This is a story about a pilot in a P-38 group in the 8th Air Force. The 20th and the 55th Fighter Groups were new to the European theater. Long-range fighters were needed to escort the bombers into Germany. Able to carry a pair of 150-gallon drop tanks under the wings, the P-38 seemed better suited to the long-range task than the P-47s used previously. The 20th Fighter Group flew their first mission on 28 December 1943 with P-38Js. This was Lieutenant Royal Frey's fifth mission. He flew as wingman to Captain Mac McLary, who led the squadron that day. From the book Aces and Wingmen by Danny Morris, on January 29th, Frey got his first kill, an Me-110, in the air. This is how he recalls the victory. We were escorting the bombers to Frankfurt. When we reached the target, we carried right on with them. At the same time, some Germans who had been attacking the big friends pulled off to the side to let the flak take over. The bombers were at about 25,000 feet, with us at 28,000, with solid cloud below. The bombers moved on over the target. Flak came up, and the cloud began to billow so you could hardly see them. As they came through the cloud, you could see some burning, and others going down in pieces. About 4 miles behind them, the next stream was coming in. You knew they'd seen what had happened, and knew it would happen to them too, but they still came on. After making their run, the bombers swung right and headed back to the west. From the 55th Fighter Squadron Mission Report, 29 January 1944. The squadron took off at 09:49 hours to make rendezvous with 3 boxes of bombers at 11:22. The target was Frankfurt. This was a very good show all the way. Bombers flew good formation and they had excellent fighter support. There was some enemy activity for us just south of the target in the vicinity of Worms. At 11:40 hours, Lieutenants Frey and Hallberg scored their first victories, each claiming Me-110s destroyed. The squadron left the bombers at 11:45 hours and proceeded for home. Pilots taking part in the mission were Captains McLary leading, Siros, I looked down and saw 2 Me-110s going after a B-24. I called McLary, my flight leader. And we both started down on the enemy fighters. We dropped down to the top of the clouds, and McLary took off after the Me-110, which had a good start on us. He bored in, but as he got within range, the 110 suddenly flipped over, rolled out, and headed north. I went all out for the Me-110. When in range, I pressed the tit and fired, obtaining some hits on his fuselage. At that precise moment, the enemy gunner in the ship returned my fire. I stopped shooting and closed in on him, and realized I had no gun sight image. I closed still further and sighted along the nose of my ship and fired. He sparkled all over, around the cockpit area and right wing group, and then rolled off to the right, trailing smoke as he spun in. I looked around for McLary and noticed I was losing oil from my right engine. I feathered it, and upon finding McLary, pulled up on his wing and found he too had feathered one engine. We picked up Willie Taylor and Everett Geiger of our flight, and they escorted us all the way back to the Channel from Frankfurt. On comparing notes with McLary, I found that the ME-110 gunner had put some bullets in his right wing and fuel tank. As he had been sitting with about 2 inches of gas in the bottom of his cockpit, he had not continued his attack for fear of a spark if he fired his guns. He was pleased that I had shot down the ME-110 that had caused him so much trouble. From Aces and Wingmen. On February 10th, the 20th Group was part of a fighter escort taking the bombers to Brunswick, about 100 miles west of Berlin. At this point, the Lightnings were suffering from engine trouble, oil congealing in the extreme high altitude temperatures. This meant that the P-38 groups were lucky to maintain about 60% of their ships over the target area. The group had been instructed to fly line-astern formations, which did not make for good mutual protection. Frey's flight was down to 3, as was the next one, and so the two joined up. Frey spotted an FW-190 at 6 o'clock high and warned his fellow pilots just as the enemy dropped down on the number 5 man, Lieutenant John London of New York. The German fighter fired a burst into him. The fighter rolled over and died as London pulled up slowly, rolled over, and went down trailing smoke. He was killed in the resulting crash. Frey blamed the restricting formation for the fact that the others were unable to help him. From Missing Aircrew Report 2157, which McLary wrote, he claimed there was a report of bandits, and he did an immediate 180-degree left turn. He circled and watched an aircraft go down, burst into flames, and disappear into the clouds below. He did not see a parachute open. From the 55th Fighter Squadron Mission Report, 10 February 1944. Today's mission is one we will long remember. We were to escort bombers to Brunswick, made landfall at 10:50, altitude at 23 to 26,000 feet. Saw a new type of FW-190. It attacked Lieutenant London, vicinity of Haselünne in northwestern Germany. He spun down at 11:15 hours. Some of the pilots think they saw his chute open. We made rendezvous with the bombers at 11:17 near Quakenbrück at 24,000 feet. We were over the target at 11:30 hours and withdrew 15 minutes later. The squadron was behind the bombers at the target area because of bounces by 2 Me-109s, 1 Me-110, and 15 to 20 Me-410s, which were working just northwest of the target. To cover the bomber force, there were 3 long-range groups, one with the heavies on the way in, and records show this was the 56th Fighter Group, one to stay with them over the target, the 20th, and the third providing withdrawal support. The Germans began hitting the bomber stream on the Dutch-German border and were still attacking when the 20th Group took over escort duty from the P-47 Group. Approaching Doomer Lake with 1010 cloud cover at 10,000 feet. Squadron mission report said this was 24,000 feet. Frey saw a P-38 turning with two Me-410s. Calling the Lightning, McLary, the flight leader, and Frey dived to help it. But they found only an Me-110 flying west. Frey elected to give chase as it was heading in the general direction of England. He dived after the enemy aircraft leveled out just under the cloud base. Estimating the distance, he climbed to find the 110 still well ahead. He turned back into the clouds, increased power, and went on instruments. Again, Frey guessed the distance, and re-emerging from cloud cover, saw his quarry about 45 degrees above, around 200 feet above the clouds. Pulling up directly under the Zerstorer, he fired. The Me-110 shed pieces of metal and started down, heavily trailing smoke. Frey climbed balls out for altitude. But after 3 minutes, his left engine blew up, and the cowling started to buckle. Assuming a blown cylinder head, he feathered the engine and started home. Checking his aircraft over, Frey realized that the generator housed in the left engine was now useless, and he was using up the batteries. He closed down all electrical equipment, and in doing so, powered to cross-feed fuel from the left wing tank to the right. Although realizing that the right tank would soon be empty, he would be able to cross-feed gas with the remaining battery. Shortly afterwards, the cloud cover dispersed except for scattered snow squalls, and he began to dogleg from squall to squall. As he flew on, he could see German aircraft taking off from various airfields. But they all seemed to be climbing for altitude and did not bother the one Lightning. Just then, some flak burst under him. And the right engine caught fire. He rolled the side windows down, but the resultant draft sucked the fire into the cockpit. Whereupon he pulled up to 4,000 feet to bail out, about 30 miles from the Dutch border. Trimming the nose, Frey rolled the aircraft on its back, releasing his safety harness. Not feeling himself falling, he looked at his feet, now above his head, and saw that they were hooked under the control yoke. He managed to kick them free, fell out at about 2,000 feet, and pulled the ripcord. The crippled P-38 screamed past in an almost vertical dive. He landed near Lundenshausen, near Münster, and was immediately taken prisoner. From the squadron mission report, Willie Taylor from McLary's flight also got a 110. In addition to losing London and Frey, Lieutenant Jack Taylor was lost in a snow flurry prior to landing. He got lost, crashed, and was killed near Sutton Bridge, England. That's 3 pilots lost of the 18 that took off on the day of 10 February 1944. The name F-R-E-Y is pronounced Frey in English or Fry in German. I don't know which pronunciation to use. U.S. Air Force Study 85 gives Frey credit for 2 aircraft destroyed when no one witnessed his second aircraft. That's interesting. Both aircraft listed as having been destroyed on the 29th of January, 1944, when Frey only claimed 1 aircraft that day. I guess it all works out in the end. From U.S. Air Force Study 85, McLary shot down 1 Me-110 on 29 January and 2 aircraft, a 110 and a 410 on 10 February 1944, the same 2 days that Frey made his claims. Guess McLary did find the 410s after Frey left. The hat and cane symbols on the scoreboard represent bomber escort missions flown. The umbrellas indicate top cover missions. Frey was liberated from a POW camp by the Russians on the 1st of May 1945 after being interned for almost 15 months. He was with the Air National Guard, then called back to active duty from 1951 to 1952. In 1955, he was grounded. With a degree in history, he worked at the research division at Wright-Patterson, then in the Air Force Museum. He rose to the rank of lieutenant colonel. That's the end of the story.